Welcome to Rethinking Citizens and Democracy with Tendai Murisa and Belinda Chawara. We're discussing Chapter 1, which is on citizens and democracy. Tendai, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Belinda.
In your book, Tendai, you quote the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, where he talks about, and I quote, "It is citizens, ordinary men and women determined to forge their own future, who throughout history have sparked all the great change and progress." Why this quote in your book?
Well, maybe it resonates with some of the ideas that we are pushing in the book. We have an agenda to reassert citizens at the center of both the development and the democracy processes in Zimbabwe and also to influence Africa. So I think President Obama's speech or quote that you just made reference to speaks to the heart of the matter, to say this is not a new idea, because he's saying historically this is what has always been. But in the process, the discourse on democracy has been hijacked either by institutional interests, by experts, or by elites. So by trying to connect, to say that we are not really trying to reinvent the wheel, but to connect democracy with its original meanings, to say from the beginning it has always been citizens. And I think the American history is full of these moments of saying that there's no way that you can achieve change without having citizens on board. The entrepreneurial energy in America, which is sort of associated with its success to be where it is right now, has got to do with a citizen-led framework, a citizen-centered framework. So citizens are not just active in a political sense, but they are active in an economic sense, in a social sense, by creating value, etc. So in everything we do, there's an argument that is made to say that if you may have the best hospitals in the world, they can only provide drugs. But healing comes from citizens, communities of citizens they make. When they make those hospital visits, when they talk to patients, that's when you actually see people change. So in every essence, no matter how technologically advanced you become, you still need a sense of a community that is made up of citizens. And there are certain problems that can only fix by citizens coming together. Yeah.
And although you quote Barack Obama, in this book, your book is centered on Zimbabwe. And in this book, you talk about a concept called Agora, which is a Greek term. What does Agora mean, and how does it relate to Zimbabwe? How can it be applied to Zimbabwe?
So in both instances, and very important questions, in both instances, quoting Barack Obama in a different context, talking about mostly the United States, and also then bringing in the concept of the Agora. I think the attempt here is to show that democracy is a universal concept. It's not something that is, because at times excuses have been made that there's some exceptionalism around Africa or around Zimbabwe, or there's also when political elites begin to say we cannot be taught democracy by others. But what the values that underpin democracy are universal, because at the center of the kind of democracy we are pushing is the concept of a citizen working together with others. And everywhere globally where we go, that's what is happening. We need to be finding ourselves in a place where citizens are actively engaged in the public space. The Agora, I think that's the beginning of democracy. When you talk about the Agora, we're talking about the public space. So even when you go into the literature and understand the origins of democracy, what we had in Greek was actually a direct representation. There was no selection of representatives. So everyone would come together to the public square and discuss public matters. But that is the Agora. And here, in a context like Zimbabwe, there's been a retreat by citizens from the Agora. We visit the Agora, but we are not permanent citizens or residents of the Agora. What do I mean by visiting? Some of us, the only time we participate in public processes is when we are voting. Then after that, we are just folding our hands, watching as observers of what is happening. So we've become like spectators at a football match. And the politicians or office holders are the ones that are playing football, determining the future of a country, while all we do is watch and comment. But the idea behind the book and that I discuss is to say we need to take a more active role in the public space.
And you talk a lot about citizens, what citizens do or what they could be doing in that public sphere called Agora. There's some examples that you talk about in the book. But one important thing that I'd like to bring to your attention, of course, is there's a quote which you, or an approach rather, that you talk about from David Matthews, a with approach. What does that mean? You know, like with regards to citizens, with regards to democracy, what does that look like?
So initially we conceived of democracy as government by the people, for the people, etc. But now we're beginning to say it should be maybe just summarized as government with the people. Right. Yeah, with the people in everything. The real challenge that democracy faces at the moment is capture either by elites or by experts. We have these top-down approaches. So our approach in the book is to begin to say, how do we infuse partnerships, collaborations? So we talk of co-production, we talk of co-creation, to say that if you want to fix a public problem, you might as well engage citizens in the framing of that problem. Because half the times, governments, not only in Zimbabwe but the world over, they're actually fixing symptoms of a problem. But what we're expecting is to say, if you really talk to citizens, they'll give you a better understanding of how a problem is affecting them, even the names they give to those problems. And David Matthews has done fantastic work in terms of pushing a new understanding to say, everywhere we go, governments are overwhelmed with public problems. And we call these wicked problems because you cannot easily scrutinize or identify the source of the problem. So the real danger is to deal with symptoms, while the problem has not been touched upon. So he argues to say that in the absence of bringing back citizens to help in the shaping of how you're allocating resources, how you're designing policies, how you're even designing education for the children, in the absence of partnerships with communities and citizens, you're potentially going to lose it. Number two, you'll not get the buy-in that you need. And number three, governments, let's face it, are not as well-resourced as we would want them to be. So at times you need the complementary actions from citizens to really even finance some of these things. So if we get goodwill from the beginning at the level of formulation, we know that we can find a way of saying that certain big problems can be fixed. There are many with citizens. There are many problems that this country faces, and government alone cannot fix. Right now, as we have in this discussion, there's a huge problem around health delivery in our country. Should it be a government alone approach, or government can consider and consult citizens on what would work as an approach in terms of resolving the issues we face?
Tendai, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.